Have you ever noticed how some people seem to know exactly how far they can push you? Not right away, but slowly. They interrupt you more easily. They dismiss your opinions faster. They expect you to adjust first, without even asking. And the strange part is that it rarely feels intentional. It just starts happening. Psychology suggests something deeply uncomfortable. People don't just react to who you are today. They react to patterns your behavior has been repeating for years. The way you handled conflict as a child, disappointment as a teenager, rejection in early relationships. Those survival responses don't disappear. They become habits. And those habits quietly teach people where your emotional limits are, long before you ever explain them. Imagine a child growing up in a house where emotions created tension, not necessarily violence, just instability. Arguments that appeared suddenly, silences that lasted days, rules that changed without warning. Children in those environments learn something powerful and dangerous. They learn to scan emotional temperature constantly. Research in developmental psychology calls this hypervigilant adaptation. The brain prioritizes detecting mood shifts instead of expressing needs. At first, this skill protects relationships. It prevents conflict. It reduces punishment. But later in life, that same skill creates adults who adjust emotionally before others even speak. When someone grows up learning to stabilize others, they rarely learn to stabilize themselves first. They develop what psychologists describe as external emotional regulation. Their nervous system monitors others to maintain safety. This creates people who anticipate discomfort early, apologize quickly, reassure automatically. To outsiders, this looks like kindness, flexibility, emotional maturity. But biologically, it communicates something else. It teaches others that emotional equilibrium depends on them being comfortable. And environments naturally organize around whoever appears most willing to adapt. Not because people are cruel, because human systems always move toward emotional efficiency. Over time, this creates a subtle social script. Others begin assuming you will absorb discomfort first, clarify misunderstandings first, repair tension first. They rarely announce this expectation. They simply start behaving according to it. And the painful part is that this script feels familiar to you, because it mirrors the emotional environment you learned to survive earlier in life. Psychology calls this pattern repetition compulsion. The nervous system recreates dynamics that once ensured survival, even when those dynamics now reduce autonomy. What once protected you quietly becomes a template that others read as permission. Most people misunderstand why these patterns persist. They believe they are choosing similar relationships, but often they are recreating similar emotional climates through behavior. Small signals communicate enormous information. How quickly you forgive, how rarely you pause before responding, how easily you minimize your own frustration. Each reaction becomes a behavioral instruction manual for others. And humans learn instruction manuals quickly, not consciously, through repetition. If someone consistently sees that conflict leads to your accommodation, their brain categorizes accommodation as your default response. This explains why many capable, intelligent people feel socially overlooked, not ignored. Overlooked. People like them, trust them, depend on them, but rarely reorganize around them, because leadership in social environments often emerges from emotional anchoring, not emotional flexibility. Anchoring signals stability. Flexibility signals availability. Both are valuable, but they produce different positioning. If someone senses your instinct is to maintain harmony at personal cost, they unconsciously rely on that instinct instead of negotiating balance. This pattern becomes especially visible during disagreement. Some people pause, evaluate, and respond deliberately. Others react instantly, attempting to repair discomfort before it escalates. Instant repair often feels cooperative, but socially, it communicates vulnerability to pressure. When environments detect emotional pressure works, pressure increases, not maliciously, systemically. Human groups constantly test where emotional resistance exists. Where resistance feels weak, influence shifts. And influence rarely shifts through conversation alone. It shifts through behavioral tolerance thresholds that others learn by observing repeated emotional responses. The most uncomfortable realization is this: people are not always responding to who you are today. They are responding to behavioral echoes of who you had to become to survive earlier environments. Your present personality may include emotional reflexes built during periods where stability depended on adaptation. Those reflexes continue operating automatically. Neuroscience shows that emotional survival strategies often bypass conscious decision-making entirely. They operate through pattern recognition and rapid threat detection. So even when you intellectually understand your boundaries, your nervous system may still react using outdated protection scripts. And when those scripts activate, others notice instantly. Body tension changes, voice pacing shifts, eye contact adjusts. Micro-expressions communicate emotional availability faster than language. Research in social cognition shows people make relational judgments within seconds based on nonverbal emotional regulation. Once those judgments form, interactions follow predictable tracks. You may continue explaining yourself clearly, but others respond to emotional rhythm more than intellectual clarity. Rhythm defines authority inside conversations, not vocabulary. Breaking this pattern does not require confrontation. It requires interruption. Interrupting, the speed at which your nervous system responds to discomfort, allowing silence to exist briefly, allowing tension to remain unresolved momentarily. These micro-delays create unfamiliar data for others. Unfamiliar data forces reassessment. When someone cannot predict your emotional response easily, they begin adjusting their behavior instead of assuming yours. That moment is where relational dynamics begin to rebalance. Many people fear this interruption because it feels like abandoning empathy. But emotional pacing is not emotional coldness, it is emotional autonomy. Autonomy signals internal stability, and stability naturally changes how others engage. People become more careful with pressure, more attentive to boundaries, more respectful of conversational balance. Not because you demanded it, because your behavioral rhythm stopped confirming their expectations. The brain constantly predicts outcomes to conserve energy. When your reactions remain consistent, your social position becomes predictable. Predictable positions rarely hold influence. Influence emerges where emotional outcomes require observation rather than assumption. Slowing reaction timing disrupts prediction cycles. Prediction disruption creates attention. Attention creates recalibration. Recalibration creates new relational possibilities. If this pattern remains unconscious, something deeper happens. You begin losing trust in your own instincts. You override discomfort, normalize imbalance, confuse accommodation with connection. Over time, this erodes internal authority, and people sense internal authority through presence, not declarations. When internal authority weakens, external environments reorganize accordingly. Changing this pattern often feels risky. You may fear losing closeness, losing approval, losing stability, but many people discover something unexpected. When emotional pacing becomes deliberate, interactions become clearer. Some relationships weaken, others deepen dramatically. Because authentic connection requires two regulated nervous systems, not one compensating for both. If any part of this feels familiar, it may not mean you're overly sensitive. It may mean you learned emotional survival early. And survival skills don't disappear automatically when the environment changes. They stay until awareness updates behavior. Many people never realize they are still teaching others how to treat them using rules written decades earlier. If this perspective helped you understand patterns you've experienced but never fully explained, staying connected here means exploring those patterns together. Slowly, honestly, and without oversimplifying them. And if you've ever wondered why certain interactions repeat across completely different people, you're probably already noticing something most never see.